Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me here today for this session about MVP or minimum viable product. My name is Kate Grinevskaja, and I'm a product manager. I work for Tableau today. I've been a product manager for a while. I worked in different companies and on different projects and products. And I just wanted to take this chance to share some of my knowledge and experience and talk about this interesting topic of MVP. Um, so here are sorry, I skipped a slide. So that was meant to be the first slide, kind of talking about myself. Um, just want to make an introduction. So as I said, I'm a product manager. I worked at Expedia and Chevron. I've worked in different roles as a project manager, business analyst, data science analyst, and I started my career in 2012 in Belarus. That's where I'm originally from. Um, so I decided to talk about building minimum viable products today because I myself learned from my experience. I learned all the useful like PM theory and practice along the way. When I started in 2012, product manager wasn't really a popular job title. So this role evolved with time. And I think I have some useful information I'd like to share with those who are new and are just starting their career in product management. Or if you're not a newbie, that's also totally fine. Maybe you get a refresher or rethink some of the approaches to product management, especially to like building minimum viable products. Um, so yeah, you already saw that about myself, a continuation of that. Here's my LinkedIn profile, it'll be on the slide deck. Um, and then Instagram, I don't really use Facebook or Twitter, so I did not share my contact details for those. So the agenda for today is really simple. First, I'd like to talk about what is an MVP, the definition and key concepts. And then let's take a look at some of the examples and fun facts. And while theory and fun facts is awesome, but what about like real life? How do you apply this knowledge in real life? And hopefully, like you'll see some of the concepts that I also learned from theory and from uh, webinars like this or courses similar to this, and then applied in my career, in my work. So let's start with the definition. What is an MVP? And for those of you who are gamers, MVP is not most valuable player, it's a minimum viable product. And that's what I want to talk about today. So according to Wikipedia, as you can see on this slide, a minimum viable product is a version of a product with just enough features to satisfy early customers and provide feedback for future product development. And while that's really close to reality, you can interpret it different ways. There are other definitions. This concept of MVP, it started from Lean Startup, and it just emphasizes the impact of learning in new product development. So it's all about learning and making it fast. Eric Ries was the one who started talking about MVP, and he defined MVP as that version of a new product which allows a team to collect as much feedback as possible with as little effort as possible early on. So that's kind of the idea, and you'll see in the future slides that it doesn't need to be related to just startups or lean development. You can apply MVP concepts to a lot of things. Okay, so now let's talk examples. You are probably familiar with this picture. If you're not, awesome. Well, let's take a look at this. So the top part of this picture talks about how not to build MVP, what's an MVP is not. And then the bottom part, like this, um, it illustrates the MVP ideas. Um, so MVP, or minimum viable product, is something that gives end users value. That's something that delivers value to your customers. It solves the customer problem. It answers like the why question. So in this particular example, well, you can see that well, the product is a car, the end product is a car, and it was built because customer wanted a way to, let's say, commute to work faster than walking. So customers want to commute to work faster than walking. And if we look at the first set of picture, the top part, well, car obviously does that, but like each steps in the development process, they don't answer like the question, they don't solve the main problem. So if you take a wheel, awesome, well, it's a wheel, but it's not helping you with commuting to work. Now, the second set of pictures is different. Um, each of the solution is a way to commute to work, like a skateboard, um, a bike, and then of course a car. Um, is a skateboard really an MVP here? Well, yes, for theoretical purposes and for like example purposes. In today's world, probably not. I'd say MVP would be closer to a motorcycle. And the reason is just the market is really competitive today. It's not like a hugely innovative idea in today's world if you were to come up with this product. And also like the production process and the techniques, the infrastructure for producing a skateboard versus a car would be completely different. So you cannot just incrementally add things to produce a car from a skateboard. But it works for kind of understanding this concept. So each of the phases should provide customer feedback, and then the development team could learn from this feedback. So if I release a skateboard, well, probably customers won't be super happy with skateboard as a way to commute to work. It's not that comfortable. You need like ideal roads. You need to know how to skateboard actually. But maybe in some universe, in some version of universe, there was an answer. Yeah, we love skateboard. That totally solves the problem. And the customer would say, wait, I just don't like the color, or well, make it change the shape a little bit. And that's the only feedback. And cool, that would be your feedback, your learning, and you could stop there, maybe add some improvements later on, or move on to a different idea and different product. So I think you got the idea, but let's keep digging into MVP and like how it works. What are the core features? So to summarize the key features of an MVP, and I think it's already clear, but it's always nice to have a slide with some bullet points and a fun picture or a nice picture. So let's take a look at this slide. Key features would start with feedback oriented. So the key idea is that you don't want to ship a product that has all the wrong functionality and UX. You want to know early in the dev process that what you're doing is the right direction. Like in the skateboard example, an MVP could be a bus ticket, and maybe in like based on some user research or investigation you conducted, that was the right idea and the right way to go. But it may not work for your customers like at the moment you release or ship your MVP to those customers. And you'll get this feedback right away after you ship your early version. With early feedback, you don't need to spend years on developing something that isn't valuable. So feedback is the key point here. And then quick delivery is also important. I'd say it's vital part of MVP products. Like you don't want to spend years or maybe even months, depending on the product, of course, on developing something that then no one will be using and no one will like. So MVP is also about quick delivery and iterative process. So the next bullet point is value. The product you ship should be solving customer problem. A wheel doesn't do that for the previous example. Um, you don't want to ship something that in theory is awesome, but that like in practice doesn't have any value to your end users. And then last but not least is minimalism. So minimal products. Don't over engineer, don't overthink it. Like make sure that something is solving the problem, but it's not something that you will spend so much time and effort on, and then eventually it won't be a delightful product. So with that, let's review the picture on the right. Um, don't build an MVP that is a bunch of functionality but doesn't have a good design and user experience. Um, your product should be secure and reliable, especially if that's not a complete innovation. So if you're building something that has competition in the market, you need to make sure that you're building something that's on the right in this picture, not on the left. You want your customers to give you feedback on all of the aspects of the MVP, not just on the functionality. Especially, if they have something to compare with. So again, don't do what's on the left, do what's on the right. Buggy and ugly features are worse than well thought through one feature. So don't take with quantity, focus on the quality. Also, it's all about feedback. If you know that your UX is not awesome, well, you already have this feedback, so there's nothing to get there, there's nothing to learn. While if you do one feature or two features instead of 20, but you get feedback on all of the aspects on like functionality and non-functional requirements, that's something to work with, that's something that adds value and helps with the next steps, the iteration. So one more cool picture here. As you can see, it's a screenshot of Google search results. And I was trying to have a slide with a diagram that shows the iterative process of MVP, so build, measure, learn. And I ended up just doing this. So as you can see, there are a lot of pictures on the web. It's not something that you haven't heard of. But that's not my intention here. So I just want to summarize some of the knowledge that's out there and point out the most important pieces. So again, you want to do an MVP product quick based on an idea and some initial research. You build it, you ship it, customers work with it and provide feedback, which you want to measure. And you can do this through various channels. It can be interviews, it can be just telemetry from like how customers use your website. It can be through surveys. So there are a lot of ways out there to get customer feedback. And then you analyze this data and you learn from it. And then you build the next improvement. Also, it doesn't have to be the next improvement. You can learn that while your product is just like it's bad. You might want to stop there and move on. And that's also a success. Like a failure is a success in a way that you don't spend so much time of your life, like so many days, weeks, months, years on something that no one wants to use, or something that's really outdated. Like if you spend too much time on building something that's innovative, that you think is innovative, but then it's not there in time, like that's not a very successful outcome. Okay, so enough with these pictures. Let's take a look at the examples. Like here, I have a list of things, or I have a list of apps and services that started out as MVP. So my favorite example is Zappos. And you see this screenshot on this slide. It looks really, really outdated. And while it looks like, you can search for something, order something, and you'll get your package delivered, ordered automatically, shipped to you. But that's not how it started. So the founder of Zappos um, started this out as a very manual process. So the founder's name is Nick Swinburne, and so he thought that people might want to buy shoes online. And in order to check whether people were interested in this, in order to validate this idea, he basically went to local stores, like shoe stores, and then he took pictures of various pairs of shoes. Um, it wasn't really like that automated, and his initial investments were minimal. He uploaded the pictures to a simple website to validate his theory, and then it turned out that while his hypothesis was correct, like customers actually wanted to buy things without trying them on. And as you know now, Zappos is a huge company. It's actually part of Amazon. So that was a successful product which started as an MVP. Now, the other screenshot here is Dropbox in its early days, and there was already competition out there. What happened was the founder or the person who was behind the Dropbox product recorded a video and showed it to the users. So it wasn't like really a product that was out there, but it attracted a lot of customers who wanted to try it out. And now, as you know, it's an awesome product and it has lots of customers. So very similar concept is Spotify. So Spotify founders built an MVP app that it just did one thing. It was solving just one problem. It streamed music. As you know, back then it was really hard to um, find music online and get what you want for like without spending too much money on buying CDs and recordings. So that was a breakthrough for that time, and the first users who tried it were like friends and family, and then it turned out that while this idea was actually successful, and then they presented the app to a larger audience. Later on, once it turned out to be a success, they signed more artists and they expanded to more countries. So another example I would like to point out is Airbnb. Um, I don't have a screenshot of early Airbnb, but same idea. They started small, so it all started when there was a conference in San Francisco in 2007, and the hypothesis was that um, a lot of visitors, a lot of attendees won't be able to find housing because of just the market situation. So the founders of Airbnb, they put up a simple ad about renting an airbed essentially on a very simple web page. And then it was a success. It was a small success, but still there were people who wanted to share their apartment. Um, that proved the idea that, well, maybe there's some potential in this direction. And they started looking for how to redesign the platform, like make it bigger, scalable, nicer UX design. So today, Airbnb is one of the largest platform in its domain, and I'm pretty sure we all know what it is, as well as this examples that I walked you through, like Twitter, Zappos, Spotify, and way more. Like you can think of other companies that started really small and then they improved with time. So what do all these examples have in common? They're solving their users' problems. They started minimal and then they improved quickly. And of course, they did this all based on the feedback that they got from their users. Okay, so back to more theory, some ideas um, about MVP, and in particular, I want to talk about misconceptions, and those are related to like terms that are being used in various industries and companies. Like you may even not know that you're working with MVP approach, and that's totally fine. Like it's not a rocket science, or it's not like a science that has just one single truth. Um, you may be recognizing that, oh well, actually I'm doing this already with features. You don't need to work for a startup, or you don't need to be the next founder of Spotify. You can apply MVP to just day-to-day project life, and it doesn't need to be a product company. It can be outsourcing. You still can apply this in your work. So MVP is minimum viable product. Maybe it's also used to mean different things. Again, different companies use different abbreviations and names, but I want to make sure that like you don't mix up some of the terms here. So proof of concept is not the same as MVP. Proof of concept answers the question: can we do something? Is this project even doable? Like, can I do X, Y, Z? So it's really early on. There doesn't need to be anything that customers work with, and obviously it's not something that they would be paying money for. So the next one is prototype. That's closer to MVP, but it's not something that you can monetize. And prototype is meant to answer the question, how can we do this project XYZ? So it would come after proof of concept. Prototype can be a presentation, a recording, like remember the Dropbox example. That can be one thing that's a prototype. Or it can be something like a software that kind of works, but only in the happy path. So in one scenario, it doesn't cover any edge cases, and also like the technology is not the one that's going to be there for the final product. So it's just meant to quickly build something and then go show it to stakeholders to understand if that's the right thing to do, if there's anything missing. It's also very similar to MVP approach, where you gather feedback, and that can be one of the steps in this circle, which we looked at. And so the last bullet point on the slide is just a bunch of abbreviations: SP1, M1, R1, any other abbreviations that stand for the first release. I once worked in a company where, well, we're using M1, M2, M3, and yeah, to me it was just like, okay, release number. Then I realized that M stands for milestone, and I was just laughing how like names or abbreviations just they're one thing, and I just don't focus on the meaning behind of things, of those things. But the idea is that you can use any kinds of abbreviations for your product development process. Again, that's not like a science. Ship point one can be the same thing as MVP. It may also not be the same thing as MVP. So ship point one can be the first release of a project that's already been planned out for 5 ship points after the first release. And then in that case, it's not really the MVP approach. Like you don't account for iterating on the feedback and on the data you get. However, the ship point one or the release one, milestone one, may as well be MVP, and don't get confused if sometimes that's the case or sometimes it's not the case. So I think that's enough with Theory and examples. Let's talk about MVP in your product manager life, or not product manager, anyone who is involved in building products and services. Um, so you can still apply MVP approach in your life if you're not working in a startup, or if you're working on something that's even not related to product development, like software development. Product can be almost anything, and MVP can mean something like um, pre-mediated. So that's basically something that's not the final, the ideal, the perfect version. That's the opposite of perfect. Um, it's just the first version, or like the version that allows you to get as much feedback as possible super fast. So let's look at this list here. Always start with understanding the customer problems. Like, why exactly are you building what you're building? Is there value? Do some research. Validate your idea even before you build something. The important part is that this research shouldn't take forever. You should act quick. So validate your ideas is kind of related to the first bullet point. Go ship a feature, go talk to your customers. What would they improve? Do they see value in this feature? Collect the data. So it can be web analytics, it can be surveys, or any ways to get feedback on your product or on your service, on a feature. You can add a button to your e-commerce website and then see which color is more attractive to customers. So that's like validating your ideas. Be data driven. Make the decisions based on what you learn. Um, Also, there are a lot of opinions that, well, you need to have a balance between, um, being data driven and then acting on your gut feeling. I stick to be data driven, and it doesn't have to be just quantitative data. It can be qualitative research. It doesn't have to be yes or no. So there can be open answers about uh, what, like, do customers like the feature? What would they like to improve? That's still data, and that's still being data driven. Again, be quick. Don't wait too long to ship the first version or to improve what you already released. Um, the market and the world today, the economy is changing very fast. Um, unless you're like working on a vaccine or something that cannot have shortcuts, or something that has to be like 100% ideal, try to apply this to your like daily life or your release cycles, any cadence that you work with. And last but not least here is iterate. Iterations are really important. Um, you cannot build Spotify in one release. That just takes a lot of years. You spend less time on the first iteration, and then you add incremental value. You don't release Dropbox in 1 month. All those successful stories are built iteratively. It takes many of those, and that's fine. In case your MVP isn't that great, you won't invest all the money and all the time in building something that is not a good product. So again, failure is success in reality. If you stick to this approach where you have an idea, you build something, you gather feedback, you analyze the data, and then apply those learnings to the next iterations, that's awesome. You can always switch to something that has more value and more potential if your initial try is not that great, if like customers just don't want to use it or don't want to work with it. And that's the end of my deck. Um, Thanks everyone for joining me here today. I hope that was helpful. And I hope that some of you who are not that experienced in this area will learn something new. Or if you're if you have experience, at least you get a refresher. Um, and it was a pleasure presenting here today. Thanks, Product School. Um, Stay safe, everyone, and thank you.